Welcome to this talk to Iranian Cyber Proxies and Capabilities. This is Jeff Barden of Treadstone 71. The following talk was given at GovSecWest in Dallas recently, and this is a follow-up to that event with some new information and additional data on Iranian cyber proxies and capabilities. The agenda for today will cover the IRGC, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corp, or Pasdaran, the al-Quds force, largely a physical entity, the Basij, unrestricted warfare we'll look at. We'll look at whether groups are potentially proxies or not. We'll also take a look at the Ashiyane digital security group and some strategic positioning by Iran relative to the United States, as well as an overview of Iranian cyber capabilities. There's a concept being pushed by the IRGC called Garb Zedagi. This is West toxification. What it really means is they want to remove anything related to the West from their cultural, whether physical or virtual. Throughout this discussion, we'll see examples of this in a growing movement to completely censor any activity related to the West from Iranian soil. It is estimated that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corp military budget is around $12 billion US. Their global rating in cyber capabilities estimated the top 5 or 6 worldwide, and we've seen examples of that recently with attacks on US banks. In addition, their cyber warfare budget, which is very hard to estimate, is $100 million US, but it's growing rapidly as the IRGC and the Iranian Revolutionary government move funding from physical to cyber capabilities. Cyber weapons in their arsenal are in order of threat are listed below. What's interesting too is now that Stuxnet and Flame has been reverse engineered with the assistance of Kaspersky and company, you can count those as potential tools that could be used against the US and our allies. This is a virtual proliferation of small arms. Now the IRGC, or Pasdaran, has certain duties that they need to follow. Here's a listing of 8 that they must adhere to, and it gives them their orders for going forward. The most important, I believe, of which is number 7, the supporting liberation movements and their call for justice of the oppressed people of the world under the tutelage of the leader of the Revolution of the Islamic Republic. This gives them largely carte blanche to determine who, in their view, is oppressed, and then to support them anywhere, physically or virtually, through whatever means possible, financial means or military. When the IRGC first started back in 1979-80, they wanted to solidify their power. So what they did is they started taking over factories and critical infrastructure throughout Iran. A minimum 51% takeover was executed across the country. Industrial, mining, transportation, all the critical physical infrastructures were usurped by the IRGC to solidify their power and make sure that the hold on it would not be lost. These companies then were awarded major contracts and as most favored vendor, actually starting to, initially was okay, but it's starting over time to alienate people throughout the country who had legitimate businesses but were losing bids, whether they had the better bid or not, to IRGC managed and run organizations. There's an estimate of about $12 billion in black market activities that the IRGC takes part in per year. This is siphoning off of money from these organizations, seen as legitimate companies in Iran as well as throughout the world. Established in May of 1979, the Pasdaran, or IRGC, actually was established to counter threats, much as a superior military voice and force. In addition, they are well schooled in asymmetric warfare, and unrestricted warfare is written by 2 Chinese generals about a decade ago. So their whole idea here was defend against cultural invasion by the West. This was the Great Satan attacks, the West toxification, as I mentioned earlier. And so they established these majority stakes in all these different high-profile companies. The telecom takeover in October 2009 for about $8 billion was a result of the June 2009 Green Movement and the election issues. Iranian state TV was taken over as well. But they're highly involved in smuggling throughout the world, where they can actually funnel their money and launder it and direct it to their different physical proxy groups. These proxy groups are listed below here, and they are located in Kurdish Iraq, Lebanon, Afghanistan. Interestingly enough, too, in the tri-border region of Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina, which is largely a lawless area, as well as the current support of Venezuela. Any place possible they can actually establish a foothold, they will. In addition, it was recently reported that many of these folks were called back to focus on the Middle East by establishing footholds in greater footholds in Syria and footholds in Egypt, Jordan, and North Africa in order to foment their revolution there as they see opportunities as a result of the Arab Spring. Prior to the June 2009 elections, the IRGC did not really look at the internet as being a threatening force. They finally did, though, as a result of the Green Movement and the use of Facebook and Twitter and other Web 2.0 sites to organize protests and to push their message out against the Iranian government. Therefore, in October of 2009, the IRGC spent $8 billion to buy over 50% of the telecom environment within Iran in order to control the internet. Much like they did in the physical world, they are doing the same thing in the virtual world, solidifying their foothold on anything internet or mobile to enable them the ability to monitor, censor, filter, spy on, and be able to arrest people who actually have opinions contrary to the IRGC and the revolutionary cause. This includes satellite control and satellite jamming, much of which we may have seen with the downing of the RQ-170 drone coming in from Afghanistan and landed safely on Iranian soil. In addition, the Basij looks at university students and security companies, and they've been tasked and paid anywhere from $2 to $7 an hour, depending upon which university, to counter Israeli and Western websites by posting scores of thousands, and we're supposed to be between 10 and 20,000 now, websites, blogs, Facebook sites, Twitter accounts, YouTube, no matter what it is, to flood the internet with pro-revolutionary fervor and propaganda. They also execute soft threats against youth who don't necessarily see eye to eye relative to the IRGC. They control text messaging and other cyber activities. They are blocking access to VPNs and proxies. And now in cyber cafes, you must list information about yourself in order to gain access. There's now video cameras there, and nothing is to be allowed with respect to bypassing the filters. That is itself a violation of the law. They're also pushing a halal intranet, or an intranet that is just for Iran, although this will be extremely tough to do with many Iranian companies attempting to do business in the global economy. Now, the al-Quds force is actually a physical wing, more like a special operations, special forces paramilitary unit. They have had ties to al-Quds in the past. They're led by this gentleman here, Qasem Soleimani, who is potentially heir apparent to Ahmadinejad. Regardless, they also are heavily involved in assassinations worldwide with respect to Unit 400, their terrorist wing, and they follow asymmetric attacks. To this point, they've not seen to be participating in the cyber side of Iranian efforts, but they have fomented unrest and tried to realign countries or those with heavy Shia populations to the Iranian revolutionary cause. They do follow the enemy of my enemy is my friend philosophy, at least for now. Once they remove that enemy, then you may in turn be put in the sights of the al-Quds force driven by the IRGC. Now, the Basij, or the mobilization of the oppressed, is estimated to be around 3 million strong. This is a force of people throughout Iran that actually targets the young, but it is used to basically keep people in line, because maybe a family member or a friend who, if they find you do not voice the same opinions of the revolution, they can turn you in. So it's basically a policing of morals and cultural values of the revolution, and again, looking at the idea of West toxification to remove anything that is not culturally aligned with the revolution. They have infiltrated academia extensively, and they monitor activities of people. It is much like the IRGC by infiltrating all the different physical entities out there now virtual. The Basij is infiltrating different academic organizations, targeting youth. This is much like a communist takeover, and much like the activities we saw in the Soviet Russia when the communists, the Bolsheviks, were trying to solidify their power. They want to mobilize sympathy towards the revolution and keep everyone in line. They are definitely a group to be reckoned with. When they got involved in the Iran-Iraq war, it was the waves of humans that went across the minefields that actually helped turn the war, and these were the Basij at the time. So they have become quite sophisticated and quite a mobile interior force that can be used for supporting the IRGC in times of war. In the early days, I mentioned, they did root out counter-revolutionary groups and helped move the old regime out. They're also behind some of the nasty activities during the June 2009 election and the turning in of people who are actually protesters, helping to infiltrate Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and different sites, posing as sympathetic to the opposition cause when in fact they were infiltrating to turn people in. This is much of what Behruz Kamalian did as well, who we'll talk about a little bit later. When it comes to academia, there's a heavy drive towards computer science and cybersecurity activities. These are just a few of the universities involved in this, but the IRGC here again has infiltrated and replaced many folks with their own, pushing professors into early retirement, where apparently the Basij now has approximately 25% of the lecturers and growing. This is to ensure that, again, the revolutionary cause is discussed and that West toxification continues. Some of the things happens with students if they do not voice the same opinion of the revolution. They kind of give them a dirty look. If that doesn't work, they'll give them a little verbal warning. And if that doesn't work, there could be a physical beating, or potentially they could disappear or die. Another side of what the Basij and IRGC has done is infiltrate boarding schools of the rich to ensure that those exposed to the West more than those inside of Iran's borders still follow the revolutionary principles. Some of the key areas in academia, and this is pretty prevalent with many of our adversaries, is they come to the United States to learn in our universities, gain their PhDs, and then go back and use this information against us to teach their students the methods of the West, whether it's cyber security or computer science, that again can be used against us in many different ways. The gentleman up in the top right here, what's unique, is got his PhD at Northeastern University, which in fact is an NSA certified Center of Excellence. Now there are many physical proxies out there. Hizbullah, Hamas to some degree, even though their background is in Sunni Islam. But you can go to Hizbullah.org or Mukawama.org or elmanar.com/lb and get information about these folks. There's other sites as well that correspond to Iran. For the most part, they've been involved in defacements to hacks for embarrassment. But any time that there is activity between Israel and Hezbollah or Hamas on a physical nature, the cyber side picks up as well. And there are a lot of targets in Israel to attack when there aren't so many in the Gaza Strip of institutions of that type. So the hacking is occurring and is taking on greater importance with Hamas and Hezbollah. And we'll see more of the activities with Cyber Hezbollah in a moment. Iran has established their own cyber division tied to the Revolutionary Guard Corp. They call it a passive defense organization. It's passive in name, but as we've seen recently, even though they deny it, it's been very offensive, whether this is Shamoon or the attacks against U.S. banking concerns over the past month. The Revolutionary Guard Corp, they manage al-Quds forces, as al-Quds manages physical proxies, but IRGC will manage the virtual side of it. So there's virtual export of arms and training with respect to malware and hacking. And there's also well-versed in physical camouflage, which is now translating into virtual camouflage. So what you see has happened in the physical world with the IRGC and infiltrating and taking things over is happening very much in the virtual world. They've found great success in proxies on the physical side, and they're doing the same thing on the cyber side. In addition to creating sock puppets and cyber personas, whether it's on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, some are open, some are actually espionage-type sock puppets that are hidden and completely out of sight and seem to be Americans or Westerners actually promoting Western ideas in order to gain favor or find people who will cozy up with them and become friends and start to gain information and filtrate intelligence upon those targets. What's interesting in Iran is the examples of computer crimes as listed in the Constitution and different articles of the revolution. The ones in yellow came to me as something significant here, where you could pretty much determine that anything published could be against the principles of the Constitution, or almost anything could be determined as propaganda. Interesting as well as the inciting and encouraging of individuals and groups to carry out acts against the security, dignity, and interests of the Islamic Republic. That gives a wide berth for pretty much anything and everything. Therefore, censorship and oppression is definitely the order of the day in Iran, as driven by the IRGC under the principles of the Revolutionary Council. In addition, insults against the state and public officials, organs, and organizations could actually be determined to be almost anything. These are demonstrations of their solidification of power and how much it aligns with the communist ideals as to their version and their twisted version of Islam that was never meant to be this way. So as you look at the IRGC and you look at the physical history and activities that they've deployed since 1979, it is definitely following suit into the virtual world, and privacy is not an issue as long as the revolutionary principles are upheld. Anything can occur with respect to oppression and arrest of Iranian citizens in Iran or abroad. Recently, I took at the girdab.ir site, and this is actually their request to turn in internet fraud, but as you look through it, these are targeted towards Iranians inside of Iran and outside, as long as they're Iranian citizens who still hold Iranian passports. This can apply to them. The URL is there. It's a gested translation of the Farsi on the site. But what you're seeing is that the IRGC really came to power trying to get rid of the vestiges of old of the Shah Reza Pahlavi and the Savak, the secret police, and the us and them inside of Iran. Us and them meaning the rich, the have and the have-nots. And their whole idea was to make things equal for everybody. But over time, the IRGC has become exactly what they vowed to remove. They get special privileges through their black market activities, and if you see a satellite dish on the top of a home or apartment in Iran somewhere, you can largely bet it is an IRGC located home. They get black market foods, drinks, alcohol, things that they're not supposed to get, and funding and monies from these black market activities. In addition, they participate in companies, as mentioned before, that get most favored company status. Regardless, as you look at this report on fraud, it pretty much is a recipe for oppression and censorship, and it is definitely people are invited to turn other people in from this website, which they can do anonymously as well. As we look at the Iranian Cyber Army, it was proposed back in 2005, but really didn't take hold until taking down Twitter of December 18th of 2009. The Iranian Cyber Army, in my view, was largely an example of the Behruz Kamalian group, now called Ashiyane Digital Security. Because the Iranian cyber army showed itself once and twice and then went away. There were no further examples of the Iranian cyber army. This was seen as a demonstration of the capabilities of Ashiyane Digital Security Group, led by Behruz Kamalian, better known as Behruz ICE, for his online handle. Once done, including some internal hacking to demonstrate the weaknesses of Iranian websites, government websites, the Iranian cyber army went away, soon to come up in a different entity. Now, the Basij has its own cyber presence as well. It's a cyber section of the physical organization, and it's led by Dr. Hassan Abbasi, and his Facebook site is actually maintained and managed by Mustafa Shamsa and some of his underlings. As you see some of the comments here on the left, it's exactly the same area they're being attacked in cyberspace. Our cyber army consists of experts from the Basij branches for university lecturers and students, seminary students, and women who are charged with attacking the enemy's websites. It's a direct quote from Dr. Hassan Abbasi. He goes on to talk about jihadist activities online and asymmetric warfare as a military doctrine as it applies now to the cyber realm. Dr. Hassan Abbasi is seen at most all the cyber conferences throughout Iran and is well respected with respect to fomenting the revolution and maintaining it. He's one of the main drivers listing people inside colleges and universities. Those who are caught in colleges and universities with activities contrary to the revolution are given a choice to either join the revolution or face jail time, or their families will suffer, or both. They infiltrate and they look for students with cyber skills and pluck them out of the air to participate in either the cyber section of the Basij or even the IRGC. When it comes to the cyber Hizbullah, they've held multiple conferences, the Cliques of the Resistance, the Liberation of Khorramshahr conference held in June. Recently, they participated in an October 21 conference as well, as you see on the slide here as it goes through the animations. In the front row, you'll see Dr. Hassan Abbasi and others, and it's also a packed house. You see these cyber conferences much like an IRSA security conference, where you have multiple advertisers like the ones down the bottom right here who are constantly pushing their products and advertising as a software industry inside of Iran with respect to cyber starts to really take off as multiple funding sources become available, many from the IRGC. Now, when it comes to Ashiyane, one of the cyber proxies out there, they've been known to hack many different government and non-government organizations in the United States, leaving their Hacked by Ashiyane Digital Security Team logo on the site as they deface it. For the most part, they've been known to perform SQL injection or DNS recursion or different types of attacks out there that have been largely been more along the lines of script kiddie type activities and defacing. At least on one side. That could be a ruse to make it look like this is their skill sets and they have nothing more behind them. On the other hand, they've gone well behind that, in my opinion, with leading some of the activities and infiltrating the IRGC and teaching and educating folks. Some of their email addresses for their site are here. If you want to take a look, I would advise you to anonymize your IP and take a look at ashiyane.ir and some of the different sites out there relative to it. One of the things they're very interested in is certifications along the lines of the Certified Ethical Hacker. They actually offer Certified Ethical Hacker courses, as you can see listings here popping up on the screen. You can even download CEH version 6 or version 7 of Certified Ethical Hacking, as they've made it available on their site or in links where you can download this information. In addition, they have a great deal of information relative to SQL injection, basic hacking, DDoS and DOS attacks, cross-site scripting, rootkitting phones, and operating systems. These are all well defined in Farsi with smatterings of English throughout. Regardless, the offering of these classes is of concern, as well as the pushing of all these different methods of hacking, as even though they may learn ethical hacking and gain the certifications, they in fact don't use it for positive activities. They definitely use it to target the West and they gain these certifications and understanding so they can in turn use it in conjunction with the IRGC and other cyber proxies such as Cyber Hizbullah. The head of the group, as I mentioned before, is Basij Cyber, estimated about 30 years old. He is tied to the IRGC-linked Ashiyane cyber group as the head of this group. He's definitely responsible for some significant cyber crackdowns back in the June 2009 activity, or the 2009 Green Movement and the election period, where he posted all kinds of images of 26 different people online, gave them to the IRGC. Those people disappeared and are soon to be either dead or still detained. The image in the bottom right demonstrates or shows a listing of those people. In addition, these are some images of Basij, who was 16 years old when he first started this activity. Regardless, the EU has created sanctions against him as well as 17 other people for human rights violations against their own people. So he's a traitor to his own kind, yet seen as a hero amongst the IRGC. This slide demonstrates a little montage of Basij in multiple different areas, whether speaking at Qom University or on Press TV in his office, or at a nightclub, or having his favorite food, McDonald's, which doesn't necessarily correspond to West Toxification, and with the Ashiyane Digital Security Group logo, the hacking logo on the screen, and hanging out with some of his friends smoking shisha. He has his own Facebook site, Twitter site. He's heavily involved in Joomla and visual or V-Bulletin forums, and he's gained great prominence over the years leading these different groups. He's a regular speaker on the cybersecurity circuit in Iran, but if he steps out, he does have sanctions now against him where he could be arrested. Many of the Ashiyane Forum members and leadership is here on this slide. You see the relative age. Now this was a couple years old, but you see their nicknames that you can follow. You can follow these nicknames, and you will follow them online, whether in social networking sites such as Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. By following them, you get an idea of where they reside. You can actually gain a lot of intelligence here with your own sock puppets, potentially. Regardless, this is the leadership as it was a couple years ago within Ashiyane. Here, too, is a sampling of Ashiyane Forum email addresses. I've actually posted this via Twitter, my Treadstone 71 LLC account on Twitter. This is actually believed to be an address of Basij Cyber in Tehran, along with phone and fax numbers. It can't be corroborated, at least by me, but maybe others out there can corroborate that this, in fact, is where his office or home is in Tehran. You could probably use Google Earth and take a look for yourself to see what is there. I have done it as well, but I'll let you take a look. This is more information about Basij. In addition, some of the latest information on the hosting sites found that Ashiyane is actually hosted in the Netherlands. Ashiyane is also moved towards creating their own firewall, the Apadana firewall, which they claim to be able to stop anything from the West. On the other hand, I would bet that it is full of content filtering activities for Iranians to be spied upon and to be examined for whether they uphold the principles of the revolution or not. The first Iranian antivirus seems to have gone away, as the par30site.com is no longer available. But Ashiyane does offer Apadana as a managed service, or it sells the device separately. Either way, it seems pretty interesting that that these sites would be hosted in the Netherlands. Now, when it comes to Ashiyane and the Iranian Cyber Army, again, Iranian Cyber Army appeared in 2009, then went away. In my view, it is in fact Ashiyane who is heavily involved in DDoS attacks, botnet hurting, site defacements, credit card theft, and they get their orders from the IRGC as a most favored vendor, but orders to attack and hack as a proxy. In addition, as I mentioned before, they are heavily involved in college and university training, Cyber Hizbullah activities, as well as a regular speaker on the circuit. Either way, Behruz and his minions have done well to fund their organization and prove that they have the skills to hack. And they are heavily involved in IRGC activities as well as Basij and training in the university side of the house. They've been known to hack, as I mentioned earlier, and leave their hacking logo as a defacement on many different government and non-government sites in the United States, as well as other areas. They were also seen to possibly be behind the hacks of Thailand police stations after Thailand arrested a few Iranians who were targeting dissent in Thailand who were about to execute bombing attacks. And the hacks against those sites were seen to come from Ashiyane as well. And when it comes to some strategic positioning here, it's interesting when you look at the Iranian activities of West toxification. The gates of hell, or the Pasdaran activities, were cyber culture forces and a cyber intelligence group that created their own sock puppets and infiltrated a lot of different Facebook and Twitter sites. They found 17,000 Iranians who were participating in what they thought was behavior contrary to revolutionary ideals. And they forced the takedown of all these different sites where these where Iranians were participating, whether, again, Twitter, Facebook, mostly focusing on Facebook in this case. Regardless, this is another example of West toxification and their move now from the physical to the social arena to stifle any creativity or anything that is anti-revolution in their eyes. They see the United States as a cyber army, as represented by the image on the bottom left. The Pasdaran was an organized, structured effort to infiltrate these sites, identify who they were, and force them to take them down or face other penalties. In addition, there was a Iranian cyber cartoonist who participates on Facebook. And one of the images was the when Canada removed the Iranian embassy and shut it down. It was no big deal to them. But when it came to the Tehran Non-Aligned Summit, you can see the viewpoint put out there by this cartoonist on Facebook that these people were stepping on the rights of journalists and others. This is not set very well with respect to the Iranian government. Therefore, Soldiers of Islam, another unique group that just popped up with a logo that looks much like Cyber Hizbullah or Hezbollah overall, holding up the AK-47, actually hacked his site and gave him warnings. This is much like an Iranian rap artist, believe it or not, who was caught or determined to be saying things against the revolution in his songs. And there was a little video game that popped up. That video game has been posted online by me before, and I will do so again. So when it comes to the communicated direction of cyber activities, the Iranian Cyber Army, or Cyber Army of Iran, as you see here with respect to their Twitter account, they're pushing a pure Islam in their view, the Islam of their revolution, not that of a Salafi Sunni view, and not that of an American Islam that is largely seen as segregated Islam and an Islam that is not vested in every activity of the government. So the organizers of Cyber Hizbullah have issued many different statements against the wrongdoers and doomsayers out there, and they want cyber jihadists to remove their enemies just as they would in the physical world. So it's taking the physical concepts and applying them to the virtual world, and applying the concepts of jihad and unrestricted warfare as methods to remove anything negative against the revolution, whether it's internal or from the West. An example of some of the activities occurred in 2009 when there was a lot of worry and paranoia already. There were rumors that IRGC had sold spyware and had it embedded on Nokia phones. Just the rumor of this alone forced many Iranians to shut off their phones and remove batteries, to take down their Facebook sites. You name it, they were very concerned about this activity, largely over the activities that Behruz had generated with the removal or the posting of the images of the 26 people who then were either killed, detained, or detained and then killed So great paranoia is demonstrated when just a rumor gets out, and these rumors can possibly be planted and are understood now by the IRGC as a method to suppress and oppress the Web 2.0 arena and different Iranians who may not agree with the revolutionary ideals. As we saw earlier, VPN and proxies, or any method whatsoever to bypass Iranian government filters, is illegal. The Simurgh VPN, small in size, less than 1 megabyte, can run on a flash drive, does not need admin privileges, was actually spiked with a keystroke logger, largely seen to be done by IRGC folks, possibly with the support of Ashiyane, not fully known. But it was discovered, and information and warnings were given that actually gave information on which binaries were official and which ones were actually malware. And it was reposted back in May 30 of 22, and is seen as a backdoor that can be used to bypass. Largely, though, it is illegal in Iran to do this if caught. So 560 kilobytes is very small for such a device. It's now being used in Syria by the Syrian Free Army and others to bypass Syrian filters, and I would imagine it's being used throughout the Middle East as a tool to do just the same. An interesting aspect here is back in June of 2002, MTN, or Iran Cell, which was out of South Africa but 51% owned by Iran, was sourcing equipment from Sun and Hewlett-Packard and Cisco, being shipped through the Gulf states and into Iran. This was reported by Reuters, but at the time didn't really stop the alignment of ZTE Corp with Cisco or others. Not until Congress released its report in early October of this year did Cisco then sever ties with ZTE. It's interesting to know that most likely, whether it's Cisco or Oracle or HP equipment, that they have the ability to phone hone or identify where they are, you would think, knowing some of the technology out there today. In addition, Huawei was given a third-party services contract for this MTN joint venture and activity. And so interesting alignment here with ZTE and Huawei, who claims to not be filtering or examining U.S. data, regardless as a different concept or different discussion altogether. But even though this was announced in June 4, nothing was done by U.S. companies until after the congressional report on Huawei, which forced the MTM and ZTE, or actually the ZTE breakup, which is tied directly, in this case, to Iran and China. Now, when it comes to an examination of U.S. cyber capabilities, it's done with the idea of unrestricted warfare in mind. The Iranians have been watching all our activities in Iraq and Afghanistan from a physical perspective, but they're also reviewing heavily our U.S. military cyber structure, NSA, U.S. Cyber Command, NATO, all the different cyber services and activities, those of the government as well as the military-industrial base, as they move to supporting the Cyber Command. What they've done is they examine it inside and out. They've actually mimicked some of these activities, but they're learning it as a method to defend against, and in turn use unrestricted warfare as defined in the 1999 document from two Chinese generals as methods to penetrate our defenses and to hurt us from an asymmetric and unrestricted warfare perspective. In addition, from a physical perspective, they have been able to establish what they call the Mosaic Defense. Their command and control is distributed amongst 31 different separate commands throughout Iran. Largely, these are population centers that are spread out, and they have rugged borders and different physical attributes that contribute to the protection of these areas. This Mosaic doctrine as well has spread over to the cyber side of the house, and it's optimized for fighting network warfare with small, agile fighting, with different proxies out there that can hit you quickly, cannot be no attribution potentially, can be aligned back to them, and much of what we have seen possibly with Shamoon and the different attacks on U.S. banking could be examples of this Mosaic doctrine tied to the cyber world and their use of proxies, online proxies, to do their bidding. Regardless, they do follow the concepts of unrestricted warfare. When it comes to unrestricted warfare, we see many different things that Iran has adopted, whether it's lawfare, the use of different proxies to drive home their their revolutionary fervor and propaganda, whether it is online or in physical world, as well as economic warfare, where they understand the interconnection of globalization and how they can inflict grievous economic harm on the economies of the West. Shamoon could be seen as a potential attack of that type when it was going after Saudi Aramco and destroyed 30,000 different PCs that had to be completely rebuilt and wiped and cleaned up. The impact could have been much worse if this was spread throughout Saudi Aramco and impacted the flow of oil. That flow of oil could have reduced oil production for a number of days, potentially, driving up the price of oil and impacting Western and U.S. economies. They also follow, again, the model, as I mentioned, inflicting grievous harm. They know the terrorism model, whether it's physical or cyber, and using the model of 9/11, where a small amount of money, a little over $500,000, was invested, and the impact, the disproportionate effects and the impact of 9/11 are still being felt today, runs into billions and billions of dollars. And the attack by Shamoon is an example of attacking critical infrastructure, as well as attacking financial services organizations in the United States, seen as a critical infrastructure to the U.S. Now, the IRGC is organized in the way as you see on the screen here, reporting into the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And we have President Ahmadinejad in the lineup here. The unusual part, though, I think, unknown to this, is down the bottom, where the universities and telecom and high schools and the mobile environment have now been taken over and infiltrated by the IRGC and the Basij, much like the physical side has. Since they recognized in 2009, they've made a concerted effort to go after infiltration and take over of these particular technologies and industries, as well as the educational systems. They're heavily involved in cybersecurity systems. They've got 10,000 to 15,000 pro-Iranian blogs and growing, as they pay a small amount of money to cyber college students or computer science students, as others, to publish and keep information posted on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as WordPress and BlogFa and RSS feeds that support the revolution and drown out any opposition. They're involved in censorship, intrusion monitoring. They've got their own malware that they're pushing out, as well as their own Apadana firewalls that they again claim will block the West, yet in fact is most likely performing content filtering and analysis against their own. They're developing sock puppets, and have for quite some time, to infiltrate many of the Western sites from a cyber espionage perspective and cyber intelligence and counterintelligence activities. So in summary, we covered quite a bit here today. We looked at the IRGC and their physical foundations and how that ties to the cyber world, and how they have expanded what they found to be successful in the physical side to the cyber realm. They continue to do so. We looked at the al-Quds force briefly as largely a physical organization, and then moved to the Basij as 3,000 million strong and growing, that keeps people in line in Iran and keeps them following the revolutionary ideals. Basij actually ties to many of the principles defined on girdab.ir, where you can turn in anyone considering internet fraud, which expands well beyond that, and it can be done anonymously. So you can largely turn in your friends, your family, anyone you think is against the revolutionary ideals, or in fact someone you have a beef with. There's proxies out there, such as Ashiyane, that have gained a foothold inside of Iran from their cybersecurity prowess, offering classes, hacking for defacements, as well as getting heavily involved in IRGC activities through their funding and most favored vendor status. And we looked at also the Iran Cyber Capabilities, the conferences they have, the Cyber Hizbullah, their sites on Facebook, and the Karbala Pasdaran activity, where they removed 17,000 Iranians from Facebook. They've also removed some folks for having beauty pageants online. Their interpretation of anything that is against the revolution is broad and wide, and definitely foments censorship within Iran. We also looked at their strategic positioning and how they've looked at the United States, and examines our activities in the cyber realm, whether it's in Afghanistan, Iraq, or at home in the United States, and they follow the ideals of unrestricted warfare. So hopefully you've gotten something from this online YouTube discussion. I've done it as quickly as possible. Face-to-face is much more detailed. Thank you for listening.